Welcome at the working group for energy policy of the Pirate Party Germany. My name is Guido Körber. I'm the spokesperson for energy policy of the German Pirate Party. And we're having an international event today about the question, is it possible to do a 100% energy transition to sustainable sources? And the idea here is to give a rough overview. So we are not going to go into very much detail. We are looking at the large numbers. So first of all, where we are using currently about 100 million barrel oil per day. That is 4.5 billion tons per year. We are burning about 8 billion tons of coal per year, and we are emitting about 37 billion tons of CO2 per year. So we are on a pretty sure way to get at least 3 degrees global warming, and likely even more if we continue on the road we are. So the question is that necessary? And the answer is, we need energy. Definitely. Energy and communication are the basic pillars of civilization. If we don't have communication, and that includes education, then we can pass on information. And if we don't have energy, then we can't do things. So without communication, without enough energy, we're going to fall back as a civilization to a more primitive status. So currently, we're getting our energy mostly from fossil fuels. The question is, where do we get the energy in the future? Fossil is definitely dead. In some of the areas, we already see the signs of the receding of that market. So it's going to have rising costs. We have dependencies on unreliable sources, and the climate change and other pollution is going to get us. So we can't continue with fossil fuels. Nuclear, that's basically dead too, since if you look at the cost of nuclear, that's really immense. Flamanville 3, which is the latest nuclear power plant in France, has already cost more than 20 billion euros, and it's not yet working properly. The last 2 reactors that went online in the USA, Vogtle 3 and 4, are driving up the energy costs in the region, since they also had cost overruns of a factor of 5. And the available uranium is getting lower and lower. The resources that are known are getting smaller to a point where it doesn't make sense to mine the stuff. So it's not a road to the future. It's in some countries it plays a significant role right now, but it won't in the future. So the things we have to turn to are the sustainable energy sources like solar, wind, water, geothermal, tides and waves, and biological waste. And we have a lot of potential there. But the question is, do we have enough potential? So let's talk about Germany. Why Germany? Because that's the energy system that I know best. And with the start of the transition in 2000, Germany was kind of like a forerunner in the transition. And since we are a highly industrialized nation, we are a really good example, since many people are saying that it's not possible to run a highly industrialized nation on 100% renewable. And I strongly disagree with it. So let's look at the energy requirements. What do we need? Primary energy is all the energy we put into the system. That's including all the losses, all the inefficiencies. And the total energy we use in Germany is 10,500 petajoule per year. Sounds a lot, but I can only say congratulations, you found a measurement that sounds really big, since 1 joule is 1 watt second. So 3.6 million joules are 1 kilowatt hour. And a kilowatt hour is something that's much more handleable when we talk about energy. So we're talking about an amount of 3,000 terawatt hours per year that Germany needs for its total energy requirements. The current electrical power uses about 500 terawatt hours per year. So does that mean we have to increase our electricity generation by 6 times? Let's take a closer look if that's necessary. First, have a look at where the primary energy is coming from. And you can see we have 2 really large blocks here, 37% oil, 26% gas. And right now in Germany, we use only about 20% renewables for the total amount of energy that we use. But the thing is, primary energy is not what we are using. The part that we are using is only the part that we are not wasting in the process of turning the energy into a form that we can use. With nuclear, you have something like 33% of efficiency. In Germany, that's not not significant anymore, since we don't have any nuclear power plants anymore. Gas to heat is 70 to 80% efficient, since you can't get all the heat into the building. You always have the exhaust that takes a bit of the energy with it. And if you turn coal or lignite into electricity, that's something like 30 to 45% efficient only. Gas to electricity is 30 to 60%. 60% is usually when you use the heat for something. And with wind, with solar and water, with all the renewables, we usually count that as 100% efficient, since the energy that we are counting there is what comes out of the system, what comes out of the solar panel, what comes out of the windmill. So if we break down where the final energy is used, final energy in this case means that we have already refined crude oil into stuff like gasoline or diesel. We have turned coal or lignite into electricity. And then we see a couple really large blocks here. There's a lot of oil used in the traffic sector. And there's a lot of gas used in the industry and in the household, which is mostly for heat. So let's have a look how we can reduce these parts. One of the really low-hanging fruits is road traffic. On average, a passenger car uses something like 7 liters of gasoline for 100 kilometers, which means it uses 60 kilowatt hours of processed energy. And compare that to a battery electric passenger car, which uses 15 to 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, then you have 3 times higher efficiency. For trucks, the ratio is similar. So we can cut down the current 520 terawatt hours per year down to something like lower than 175 terawatt hours per year with battery electric vehicles. And that also would eliminate the energy that's needed for the refining of the crude oil into the usable fuels, which is about as much energy as you need to run the electric vehicles. And you also cut down the energy that's needed for the distribution. If you wanted to switch to e-fuels or to hydrogen, that would not reduce the amount of energy you need for the traffic sector. Actually, it would increase the energy you would need for the traffic sector, because hydrogen and e-fuels are highly inefficient. With e-fuels, you can easily triple or quadruple the amount of energy used for road traffic. So that's definitely not a good idea to do. Another no-brainer is heating. With fossil fuels, we have an efficiency of 70 to 80%. If we use heat pumps, then we are doing something that at first looks like a magic trick, since when you put in 1 kilowatt hour into a heat pump, you're getting 3 to 5 kilowatt hours of heat out of it. That's because the heat pump doesn't generate the heat with the energy you supply to it, but it uses that electric energy supplied to it to pump the heat energy from one system into another. It takes it from the environment and moves it into your building. Or in the summer, you can reverse the direction, since the heat pump is basically an air conditioning system. So you can highly optimize the energy use of the heating with going to heat pumps. And the same is true for many applications in the industrial sector, where you need warmth, where you need heat for treating material. So if we take only these two big blocks, then we go down to something like 1,500 terawatt hours per year. So that's an amount that sounds a lot better, since it's about 3 times the electricity generation we currently have. And that is without reducing anything. It is just about doing things differently, doing them with different systems, but still doing basically the same thing. So we don't lose any comfort, we don't lose any abilities. We are just eliminating CO2 emissions. So the question is that expensive to go to 100% renewables? I mean, we would need something like in the ballpark of 1,000 gigawatt peak of photovoltaics, and something like 200 to 300 gigawatts peak of wind, plus biomass, plus geothermal, and what else is available. Usually depends on the locations, like hydropower is not available everywhere. Geothermal is also not available everywhere. But if you add all that up, then the question is it going to be more expensive? And the answer is no, since photovoltaics and wind is currently already cheaper than most of the fossil fueled energy sources. So we basically also reduce the cost of the system. And a question that's often asked is, where do we put all that stuff? And if we are talking about 1,000 gigawatts of photovoltaics, then there's a really simple answer. We have that much of potential on on buildings, using roofs, using the outside of buildings, and just basically wrapping buildings in photovoltaics, since the cost for the panels have dropped so much that in some cases people even use photovoltaic panels as fences, since they are cheaper than building an actual fence. Then we have a lot of potential with agri photovoltaics, combination of agriculture and photovoltaics, where you basically use the panels to protect the plants. You protect them from heavy rain from hail, and you also reduce the evaporation, and that increases the yield and the quality. A lot of farmers in Germany already use such combinations, and they're totally happy with this combination, since it gives them an income from the electricity they generate, plus it reduces problems on the fields, and increases the quality of their crops. And then we have sealed areas like parking lots. It's a total no-brainer to put a roof of solar panels over a parking lot, which allows you to directly charge the cars which are parked under the panels. And since wind and photovoltaics are to a high degree counter-cyclical, so when the one is available, usually the other one is not as good, or when one is not available, the other one is usually available. A good mix of these systems reduces the required reserves, or the storage, or whatever we do to get over the times when there's not enough wind and solar. Which brings us to the point of the renewable energy drought. There are lots of fairy tales about how long an energy drought usually lasts. This is the graph for last year for the share of the renewable energy production in the German grid. And you can see there's only a single really low dip in this graph, which was a single week in the winter. So if you go even further into the diagram, this year is on a week basis. If you go onto a daily basis, then you see that usually the dips are 1 or 2 days. They are not weeks. So we don't have the requirement to store energy for a couple weeks or even months. We have to have the ability to store energy for a couple days. And on top of that, for those generation methods which can be controlled, like biomass, we need to get them into into the market of the flexible energy resources. Right now, the biomass in Germany is typically run as base load, which is totally stupid, since we don't have a requirement for base load anymore in the German grid. So it would make a lot of sense to get them into the flexible generation and use them as reserve. So the question is, how do we bridge these gaps that we have? Long distance power lines is one of the methods that is usually advertised a lot. That means we move the energy in space. The problem there is it takes very, very long to plan these power lines. It takes very long to build them. There's going to be local resistance by people who don't want to have them in their backyard. There's a high cost, and if you take into account how the refinancing of the grids work in Germany, then the more than 300 billion that are planned or envisioned to be spent until 2037 will increase the grid fees by something like 10 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So that is definitely not really a good option. The other option is to move the energy in time. There are several options like time variable use the energy when it's available, pumped hydro, hydrogen, batteries. Variable use is a really good tool, but not for all applications. There are lots of processes that can be planned, that can be moved in time. Like when you have plants that smelts metal, then usually you can plan when to do that and make it dependent on the price of the energy. We need a method here to make the pricing more variable than it is now and reward discontinuous processes. Also, charging electrical vehicles as a variable load, that's also a good idea. If we have too much energy in the grid, then why not dump it into electrical vehicles that are connected? But we need the regulation for that, and we need the infrastructure for that. Basically, we need to have charging points at every place where cars park. Pumped hydro, a really good option, but it has a massive environmental impact. The potential in Germany is basically used up. The capacity for pumped hydro is usually not that big. It looks a lot bigger than it actually is, especially if you compare it to how much do we really need. And the reaction time of pumped hydro is medium, so it means that it can't catch all the changes in the grid. You need additional systems to do that. Hydrogen, this part is going to be a bit longer since hydrogen is a big hype bubble right now. But the problem is hydrogen has very distinct physical limits. And physical limit is something that you can't argue with. It's just there. And you're not going to reach that. You're always going to be quite a way off that limit. So that means you're going to be even worse than the theoretical limit. For electrolysis, you have a physical limit at about 85%. You can't get past that due to physical processes that can't be changed. And in real electrolysis, you get to something like 70%, but only under optimal conditions. The fuel cell has the same problem. It also has some limits, and in the real world, it doesn't get to 70% usually. Under road conditions, if you put it into a vehicle, it is usually far worse. You are lucky if you're getting to something like 50%. Plus, on top of that, it needs quite critical metals, platinum and palladium, which are very energy intensive and quite, environmentally not so friendly. Another problem with hydrogen is the low density. That is nice if you look at the weight it has, but if you want to put a lot of hydrogen somewhere, then that's going to be a problem. So we can't transport or store it easily. At 700 bar of pressure, you still have 25 liters of volume for 1 kilogram of hydrogen, and 1 kilogram of hydrogen is about 33 kilowatt hours of energy contained. So, but getting to these 700 bars of pressure means you have to invest about 10% of the energy that's contained in the hydrogen. So 1 kilogram means something like 3.3 kilowatt hours are invested to get to that pressure. And when you want to transfer it from one tank to another, you have to increase the pressure in the tank it comes from. Otherwise, you just get an equilibrium, and it doesn't help you. If you liquefy hydrogen, you still have 14 liters for a kilogram, but you invested a lot more than 30% of the energy contained in it. And you end up with a quite nasty stuff since that leaks easily through very, very small cracks and at minus 252 degrees centigrade. It's not easy to handle. If you want to convert it into other stuff like into methane, then you're going to lose even more energy in the process. So it's not efficient. The basic efficiency, if you do electrolysis, store the hydrogen and convert it back to electricity, you've lost about two-thirds of the energy contained. If you use it in cars or trucks, then you have an efficiency that's less than 20%, and you're wasting a lot of space. So the story is that you need hydrogen to get long distances. Yeah, you can do long distances, but unfortunately, you don't have space in the vehicle anymore. The same thing applies to planes. So flying with hydrogen is also not that useful. And since these are physical limits, there's no potential for improvement. So any discussion about it is totally futile. And importing is also pointless since the volume is just too big and it's too inefficient. It gets even worse the longer the distance is. So summary is green hydrogen is going to be important to decarbonize the chemical industry. But besides that, there are few applications that make any sense, and energy is definitely not an application that makes sense for hydrogen. Which brings us to batteries. Most people think that batteries are expensive, which is not the case anymore. Over the last decade, batteries have dropped in by more than 90% in the cost. And there is still a potential for something like 70 to 80% more of cost reduction. And right now we are already at the point where large-scale, grid-scale storage based on batteries is already the cheapest option to store electrical energy. The stationary batteries last at least 5,000 full cycles. Full cycles means if you go up and down by just 10%, you can do that 50,000 times with the same battery, and the battery cells are getting better and better. So the life cycle of the batteries is not an issue anymore. And in China, they're building large storage facilities. One large storage facility with 16 gigawatt hours of capacity, which got the system level storage systems, not the cells, the system level storage systems at $60 per kilowatt hour capacity. That translates to operating costs of less than 2 cents per kilowatt hour that is stored in these facilities. No other energy storing system can compete with that anymore. So basically, that's the direction to go. So the future grid will look a lot different than the grid we have today. It will be much more localized and decentralized. It will be cellular with local storage, with local generating capacities, and it will shift the energy through time, not through space. So the long distance connections will be used only for evening out some imbalances, but not for transporting massive amounts of energy, like it is envisioned with the idea of having a copper plate Europe, which is a political term. That means that you can move every kilowatt hour through all of Europe. That would be so expensive that it makes no sense at all. And we're going to need flexible pricing to to be able to move the use of the energy to the times when it's available, at least for the applications where it's possible. And we need to build storage very fast and not the long distance lines. We also will need peer-to-peer energy trade, especially for the small and medium systems. It makes sense if you have a storage facility that has a lot of roof capacity but doesn't need much energy itself, then it should be able to sell the energy to the neighbors, which maybe are producing companies that need a lot more power. But right now, we don't have the regulations for that. So the question is, how much is that going to cost? For Germany, we are going to need, I already said, something like 1,000 gigawatts of photovoltaics, 200 to 300 gigawatts of wind, plus something like 5 to 10 terawatt hours of storage. And the cost for that, roughly, will be something like 2 trillion euros. And that means over 13 years, it's about 150 billion per year. So doesn't sound too much, but sounds a lot. But if you compare that to what the current system costs, we are currently buying fossil fuels from abroad for something like 80 to 100 billion euros each year. On top of that, we have the maintenance and replacement of fossil fuel systems, which also adds up to at least 50 billion per year. So we are talking about costs for the existing system that are in the same ballpark as the investment we have to do into the future system. And the future system is going to be a lot less expensive, since it doesn't need fuel at all. So basically you have to install it. That's the major thing for doing the transition. So the future system will also be cheaper than the current one, and it will be cleaner. So what is the problem? The problem is we have a lot of people who are making a lot of money with the current system, and they're using quite a bit of that money to make sure that the system stays the way it is. That's the problem. Thank you. So we are open now for questions and answers and discussions. Go for it.
Thank you very much for this talk. My first question is regarding the battery technology. You said we can expect a further cost reduction of maybe 80%. And I know that you are quite experienced in electronics, so do you think that is the very end, or can we even go further if we think about new technologies? Just thinking about the solid-state batteries, which are now less inflammable, much more efficient than the other systems. Maybe not on a time range of 5 to 10 years, but if we say what might happen in 2050, can we expect maybe that this can even drop another 99%? Or would you say
that's a good question. As I say, predictions are always quite hard to do, especially if they are about the future. It's a good question how much further the cost can drop. I think basically with batteries, the limiting factor is the raw materials that you need for the battery. One big step that's already kind of happening is the transition to sodium ion batteries away from lithium ion batteries, or not away. Basically, it's another option in addition to lithium ion batteries. And with sodium ion, you have much cheaper raw materials that you need for that, since basically it's salt that's abundant, and there the question comes down mostly to how expensive is it to produce the raw materials, which in turn depends on how expensive is the energy. For many raw materials, the amount of energy you need to extract the raw material is the defining factor for how expensive the raw material is. If you look at stuff like gold or platinum, you find single-digit grams in a ton of material. So you have to invest a lot of energy to extract the raw metal. And that is what defines the high cost or the high price for gold, for platinum, and the other platinum metals. And with something like sodium, it's abundant. You basically, can build an evaporation pond and get the stuff with a shovel.
Maybe just, I think you showed that even with your calculations, which in my eye are still conservative and not somehow hyping topic, we can just do it.
Yeah.
I would just add one idea. So, for example, we talk about, let's say, we need 150 billion euros a year. That means 2,000 per person. That is the average everybody anyway pays for oil, gas, petrol, and heating. We even pay more. We pay much
Yep.
more. So we need maybe also a regulation that part of this money is not used to pay high gas prices, but or let's say low prices we get, low money we get when we feed our electricity from the solar cells in the grid, only 7 cents or 6 point something. There needs to be some transition so that this money of the energy we produce and we need goes into the transition of the whole system. One other example, everybody will buy a new car in the next 10 years. So that not everybody, but let's say every family. So maybe we talk about 20 million new cars in the next 10 years. And if we just buy them as electric cars, then we will have 2 terawatt hours of storage capacity only from the electric cars on the streets we anyway buy. So without anything further, that's half of the way to go. So if we just have the bidirectional charging system, this will come from alone.
You actually don't even have to go bidirectional there. Having that as a plannable load is already helping the system a lot.
Yeah.
So if you have a place to put the electricity when it is available, that's already a factor that helps a lot.
I don't see any reason why we do not do the bidirectional charging. That would also that would reduce the load of the grid dramatically.
Yeah,
Just have these sinks and sources of electricity everywhere where a car is standing.
Yeah, that's one of the points about the grid. There are lots of talks about we need to expand the grid, but the mistake most people do there is we don't need to build the long distance lines. What we need to do is we have to make the grid smarter. And we have to get the generation and the use closer together. And that also means we're going to have to place storage into locally. There's a good example in South Australia. They are putting battery packs with a couple dozen kilowatt hours right on the electricity poles. So they keep the solar power that's generated during the day when most people are away to work. They're keeping that in the street, basically, so it's available in the evening and during the night. And ideas like that are going to reduce a lot of the cost of the system, a lot of the transition costs. And yeah, building such units, it's a lot cheaper than building a high voltage long distance line that can only transport the electricity that's available. And when none is available at a time, you need to back up, or you need to have some storage. Okay, we have the hand raised. Yeah, Dustin.
Hey, so what kind of storage solutions were you looking at? More like a hydrogen combination with sand-based heat storage, and then, or just various kinds of heat storage mixed with like traditional battery storage combined with what else, or a mix of things that localized levels, and then what else? I guess if you're storage focused solution.
Yeah, we were talking mostly about electricity, so the logical choice is the battery storage. Hydrogen makes absolutely no sense at all. That's a waste of energy, and yeah, not doesn't make sense. It has so many things against it. And in some cases, yeah, heat storage also makes sense depending on the application. Basically, there's no one size fits all. But there are things that are going to dominate. And for basic energy storage, the battery will be the system that dominates.
As I fully agree, the heat storage, the pure heat storage could be an interesting addition. And somehow, if we look what the northern European countries do, like Sweden, Finland, then they build heat pumps and then they invest in heat storage. So practically, they wouldn't do it if it's not efficient or, let's say, market relevant. If it's not paying off. And of course, if you just want to heat buildings, if you have space, maybe it's difficult in big, narrow cities, but on the land, they really have big space. You can just think about heat storage with water tanks or stones, even they use even hot stones. That could, of course, be attractive also then for the heat pumps. So if you then have a system that produces the heat by heat pumps, you do not necessarily keep the heat at 80, 90, 100 degrees or something. Well, the cost-efficient systems, they do it, but in principle, you could even be happy with wastewater that has 20 degrees in winter and use your heat pump to produce heating for your house. It's a nice initiative in Berlin. There's a company searching for local heat systems like canalization, riversides, or there are a lot of thermal sources which are not necessarily these deep drilled holes in the soil, and especially in principle, of course, if you would drill narrow holes one next to each other in a city, then you could also end up in a complicated situation that the soil cools down and then the heat pumps get less efficient all over. So we should also looking about these options. I should look about this company and Guido, I can send it to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
what I didn't quite understand, I mean, in the transition period, let's say from the present grid to the smart grid, I mean, implementing the smart grid, I mean, we'll have both at the same time, or, I mean, the traditional and the smart grid, and I mean, how much would that cost? I mean, to basically, or can we simply build a smart grid and then switch, I don't know.
We don't build a new grid.
We don't.
We transition the existing grid, and that's a process that's already running. The problem is that we have people who are interested in pulling that development into the wrong direction. And that is especially with the long distance landlines. I don't know if you're familiar with how they make money.
Very roughly.
The idea there is that when you get the permission to build a certain line, and you invest an amount X, then you're getting an interest of 6.91% on this amount you spent. Plus, you're getting the operating costs. So it's an absolutely safe investment with 6.91 return per year. So, of course, people who are doing that are interested in building lots of these lines. And they don't have a problem if the line gets more expensive than originally planned. Like, for instance, the Südlink, which is a big line that's under construction to some degree. That thing is going to cost 10 billion euros. It has a capacity of maximum 4 gigawatts. If that line runs at 100% load, 24/7, that means that every kilowatt hour that goes over that line is going to produce 1.9 cents of income for the company, plus the cost. And that, by the way, that is, for those who are not familiar with the project, it's a project that basically wants to transport electricity from the North Sea to Bavaria. That's once all the way through Germany. And the idea is that wind energy is cheaper at the North Sea coast than it is in Bavaria. Interesting thing is that the cost difference per kilowatt hour is roughly about 2 cents. So that means already the income for the company that's going to run the overland line is going to be compensating the cost difference for the wind power. And it doesn't make sense at all to build that thing.
But, are there options, let's say, for local communities to kind of start their own, say, limited processes so they can circumvent these?
Depends on the local situation. In Brandenburg, there is one village that's Feldheim, which has basically made itself independent from the large energy companies. They have their own energy company that is producing heat and electricity with biomass, with wind and solar power. And I think they already have some storage and they're working on more. And they have the situation that they are only using the grid to sell excess electricity. And they have much lower electricity and heating prices than the rest of the country. So Okay, Fredo was first.
Yeah, and just a quick response to what was just the last question. So actually, Feldheim was already forced to store energy way more than 10 years ago, because they said, okay, we are fine not to use the laundry machine, for instance, in the night or whatever, when we see the wind is not blowing. But then they were forced by authorities, no, you need more storage, you need this and that. So they already built battery packs, huge battery packs 10, 15 years ago when it was not cheap, but not because they needed, but they were forced to. And of course, this developed a lot now with batteries, itself. And so they have also other storage methods. As you said, they actually started with an agriculture run biomass thing plus wind, and then the rest come on top. And biomass you can store anyway, even over seasons.
Okay, Dustin?
Well, something I wanted to talk to was, I guess, looking at sustainable ways of manufacturing green energy, such as trying to incorporate more carbon nanotubes and material science to make it easier to build solar panels and such using things that can be produced in any country to make it more likely for more countries to adopt energy solutions since they not have to import them. Have people been looking into that on your guys' side at all? Or reducing materials like thin films and other science or approaches like that, research paths?
Yeah, there are several projects that are looking at alternatives to the silicon photovoltaic cell, but none of that has really market relevance so far. The two developments that are most promising are the organic photovoltaic cell, which allows you to produce the cell basically as a film. So you can make cells that you can roll up and you can produce them in a roll-to-roll process like a printing process. But the problem there is it's a really high-tech process that needs a lot of know-how, and there are few companies that have mastered to make this type of cell so far. I don't know if that's going to be different in the future or if it's going to be viable to produce that in countries with less technological background. Yeah, I have to see what comes out of that. The other option is perovskite, which is yeah, a mineral based cell, and there the problem is that you have to make them very tight to keep moisture and oxygen out of the cell, and that's a process that's not yet working that good. Don't know when they're going to be ready for prime time. But current status is that the vast majority of cells is based on silicon, and the processes for making them are not rocket science, but they are somewhat complex and need a certain degree of technical prowess to do that.
Can I add something right here? So thanks also for this question. I'm myself involved in a project that just got little funding for that at the University Halle. That's a little city 200 kilometers south of Berlin. I'm currently working as a scientist, as a physicist. We develop photobioreactors breeding algae, and this should be autark. They should be independent from supervision, and in ideal case, one could place them at the coastlines, for example. So then you need water, a lot of water, of course. But yeah, on coastlines, or also in inner sites, if you have water pumps there, of Africa, for example, to have biological vegetarian production of proteins or plant-based proteins. This is surely not a reasonable approach in the framework of this energy transition, but I think we are facing a lot of possible applications of nice, interesting ideas where people develop alternatives to the current status quo. That is not only the usage of oil and gas and not only our food production, that's even much more. It's even the way how we think about our environment. And I think we need a transition there. I realize if I talk to the people in Halle, Halle is not really known as the most open city in Germany. That's in Saxony-Anhalt, where the right-wing AfD gains 25 or more, even 30% in the votes. And some people, they really, I don't know why, even professors, they laugh on these approaches, that we want to do a reasonable transition. They don't have any arguments. There come just stupid statements like, I still want my meat. And as long as we have this in our brains, we cannot really approach a reasonable transition. So I believe we have to talk to the people more and more. I always say to them, well, I eat what's tasty. And then sometimes they look at me and say, yeah, well, I also do that. So we should not accept these opinions. And as Guido said, the critical thing is if the opinions are driven by self-interests, by own interests to earn a lot of money from the system and then even lie at the people what's possible and what not. We need to face these ideas, their statements and their opinions with facts, speak against them, contradict them, and help to move somehow this transition also in the minds, so that people are open for developments. And then I am sure we will just see that the best will grow, and that is regenerative energy production.
Yeah, that thing with the opinions and opinion shaping, basically, that is really a problem. There's so much wrong information on the market, so to say. For instance, in Germany, we have a large public publishing house that has a couple newspapers, Springer Verlag, and the main shareholder of that publishing house is an investment fund that has a lot of investments in fossil fuels. So you can make a guess what they're writing about renewables. And that's one of the problems, that the people who are making a lot of money with the existing system don't want that to change. And even though the transition has a lot of advantages for everybody, and also opens totally new business models, there are always the people who want their old business model to continue. And they are going to spend a lot of money on spreading misinformation. And if you package that misinformation in a way that appeals to certain people, then it works. Okay, any further comments, questions? Yes.
In addition to what you just said again, about the resistance to the new energies is also a psychological thing. If you were already, I mean, for instance, in Germany, probably worldwide, you connect it was a fight against nuclear power and the promoting of renewable energies. You connected with the Green Party. So therefore, if you are not a big fan of the Green Party, let's say, like me, by the way, you are have problems to accept that some of these concepts are still good, and and this is where it comes this renaissance for nuclear power. This is where it comes to wind turbines are ugly or dangerous or whatever, and all of this other stuff. And so a part of it is not at all only related by industrial lobbies or those who make money with it, but also for those who make a kind of a profit, namely political profit with it, just to be against these concepts which are closely connected to the Green Party.
Okay. There's no further questions. Okay, Dustin.
Sorry, I keep taking time. Another thing I wanted to bring up was looking at so trying to get local businesses more involved in the process because a lot of problems seem to be coming from larger businesses actively acting to slow the process down. In many places, getting local business to participate in at least part of the solar transition process, make the local community more engaged, go to farmers markets, things like that. Getting engagement from the community can help penetrate those barriers a decent amount, so long as getting the community involved in the process of the transition in community centers is a great approach to combat misinformation for sure. And just, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's always best to show people directly the advantages they have from the transition. Like I read about some states in the USA have rules that when a school gets solar power on their roofs, that the money that is made from selling the electricity directly goes into the budget of the school, rising the budget and allowing the school to do more stuff. So something like that is always a good idea. So with the USA right now, with the current government, I'm not sure if those things are going to fly, but it's definitely a good idea to do stuff in the way that the people do directly benefit. Okay, then I have to say thank you for participating. And I hope that we'll soon do another such event and stay connected and or get better connected. And thank you and have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.